What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, and I am super excited today because we've got a great guest. That's Jay Jaffe, who is a senior writer for FanGraphs. He's also the author of a book called Cooperstown Casebook, which we're going to get into in a little bit. So, Jay, I really appreciate you joining us, and I guess I'll start with an easy question, which is, how's your offseason going?
It's been a mix here. A lot of fun voting for the Hall of Fame for the first time, and banging out that stuff. A little, kind of annoyed by the slow pace of free agency and and all of that. Uh, I guess I wrote up two very small transactions earlier this week, the Martin Perez and John Lester signings, which together I think come out to a guarantee of less than $12 million. It's just kind of small potatoes when when you think about the big money stuff. I did, but the Hall of Fame is still kind of my beat right now, and I'm hopeful that. That we can look to baseball on a relatively normal time frame
Yeah.
here in the not too distant future. That to me, that's the big deal
Yeah,
here.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I've got some 2021 Dodger questions to get to, but before we dive in, I'd love to talk a bit about the Hall of Fame. As you mentioned, you've written a book about it. It's something you're passionate about. I believe the results for this year's voting are going to be announced next week, and you mentioned it. This is the first time you've actually had the opportunity to vote officially. So, what was that like for you? I imagine that was a pretty meaningful experience.
Yeah, it's something that when I got ball, I never considered was really a likely outcome. Um, but I got into the BBWA 10 years ago or 11 years ago now, and managed to roll with the punches enough that I got my ballot. I'm really lucky to have had the opportunity to write for some cool places that have been part of the BBWA, and lucky that people have taken to my work, taken to understanding what goes into my work, and consider me an authority on the Hall of Fame. And it's been it was really cool to every step of the way. When I first got an email from the Hall of Fame during the World Series to pre-register to receive my ballot, to getting that ballot, and going through the whole process, and finally actually sitting down on December 28th or 29th or whatever it was, and actually putting pen to paper for the first time, because I wanted to go through my usual process just as I did when I was doing my quote unquote virtual ballots for SI and FanGraphs. That yeah, it meant a lot, and the criticism you get while doing it is all part of the process, and uh, you know uh, really, on the whole, just a cool experience.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Sorry,
and
sorry. The camera's shaking here.
it's all good.
Like I said, I don't have my tripod.
It's all good. It's all good. Well, and anybody that wants to check out your stuff, fangraphs.com, you've got a great article kind of outlining who you voted for and why. So I won't necessarily get into the specifics there. I guess I'll ask you about since we're a Dodgers show, I'll ask you about a couple former Dodgers who are on your ballot, and that's Andrew Jones and Gary Sheffield. And I bet you would understand why I love one of these votes, and I personally struggle with the other. With Jones, for me, I've never been able to wipe away the memory of the 2008 season. Of age 31, $36 million, and he put up one of the worst offensive years I can remember. Hits 158 and 240 plate appearances, negative 1.1 wins above replacement. So, I know personally, I'm looking at it as a fan. You're looking at this sort of as an unbiased fan of Major League Baseball as a whole. So, I guess my question is, you look at peak performance a lot in your sort of system. Do you look at the opposite? Do you look at kind of like the bottom of a guy's career? How
Yeah,
does
I
a
mean,
season like
it
that come
takes
into play?
it has an impact. And look, I grew up a Dodger fan, so I'm sympathetic to what the fans went through, with Jones. And I think you look back at the way he handled himself. I don't think he did a very good job, and I understand why Dodger fans would be resentful of him, for the way that things panned out. Although, I think he did them a favor by accepting that buyout, because that's what led to the Dodgers being able to get Manny Ramirez. So,
Yeah.
there were good times as well, that came with it. Um, Yeah, my system is founded in wins above replacement, and so if a guy, like Jones has whatever was like a negative 1.6 or something, war season, that's going to cut into his chances. But
Yeah.
my system does place a special emphasis on a player's best seasons. It's a 7-year peak on Baseball Reference. It's WAR 7, and he fares very well in that, above the average Hall of Fame center fielder, in fact, and that's the basis of my support there. He was the key defender during the Braves' long
Yeah.
run as NL East champions. Um, didn't have particularly great postseasons, other than that '96 when he had the 2 home runs in the World Series game as a 19-year-old. Um, but when you think about the way that you know of those 3 Braves pitchers that are in the Hall of Fame, neither Greg Maddux nor Tom Glavine was really, first and foremost a strikeout artist.
Yeah.
So they both did get to, some big numbers there because of their longevity. They needed their defense behind them, and not to say that John Smoltz didn't, but Andrew Jones was the constant
Yeah.
behind them, and he was the guy running down all those balls. In his heyday, he could play shallow enough to cut off a ton of singles and yet still run down the extra base hits that went over his head. He couldn't do that as a Dodger because of the condition of his knees and the extra weight he was carrying. Unfortunately for him, his career kind of petered out into his mid-30s, and so he's had a harder time convincing voters that he belongs. And I think that's an obstacle he'll have to overcome.
Yeah.
I'm optimistic, in terms of where he is in the cycle and the dearth of strong candidates upcoming, that he'll eventually get in. We're talking, late in his 10-year run. But I do think that in time, he may win over enough voters, but we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, kind of. I mean, you're the perfect person, I think, to answer this next question. As somebody who grew up a Dodger fan, as somebody who studies sort of the history, era to era, and so I'm going to ask you a question that I got into an argument with my dad, who grew up a Dodger fan as well, about, which is Sandy Koufax and Clayton Kershaw. Obviously, this debate sort of came down to
Right.
comparing eras, and Kershaw ranks ahead of Koufax on some of the on Jaws, which you are the founder of, a statistic. Both guys, I was a little surprised at kind of where they fell. Koufax is pretty low, obviously because of longevity, but I guess sort of the question is both Kershaw and Koufax. How do you compare them, and maybe bigger picture? How do you compare guys who played in such different times with such different contexts around them?
Yeah, well, I mean, with wins above replacement, you build in adjustments for the player's home park and the league scoring levels and the caliber of defense behind them, and Koufax, is a mythical figure and something of a sacred cow, especially for Dodger fans, and I get that, and to be fair, until this year. Clayton Kershaw didn't have the World Series ring,
Yeah.
whereas Koufax, was a major factor in 59, 63, and 65. So he delivered, and his postseason, resume was just, in those years is just absolutely fantastic. Um, and Kershaw, I think had a much more uneven postseason resume, with more layers of playoffs and,
Yeah.
a lot of bad to go with the good. I don't think Sandy Koufax, with the exception of his rough starts in 1966, really had anything close to that.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was '66 was Willie Davis letting him down defensively in the World Series opener. So it's tough, but you really have to put some faith in the metrics, in order to see. But when you do, I mean, first of all, just looking at Sandy Koufax's home road splits, I mean, he had a 1 point something, like a $1.25 or something ridiculous ERA at home in Dodger Stadium. And it was about 2 runs higher
Wow.
everywhere else, if I'm remembering correctly. It's been a while since I looked at the exact splits, but he was pitching in the most favorable run environment, for a pitcher on earth during his prime, and in Dodger Stadium from '62 to '66. You have to account for that, if
Yeah.
you're going to make an honest reckoning of Sandy Koufax's career. Clayton Kershaw is pitching in a much more hitter-friendly environment, even though Dodger Stadium still favors the pitchers. He's in an era where lineups are much deeper. The level of talent, 50 years later, is much higher than it was then. I think I think you probably have to concede that Clayton Kershaw has had the better career. There's a lot of myth around Sandy Koufax, and the three championships aren't, those flags fly forever, and the
Yeah.
things that Koufax did, the symbolism of him not pitching on Yom Kippur,
Yeah.
isn't lost. The legend is always going to be there. But I think what Clayton Kershaw has done, particularly now that he has helped secure a World Series victory, I think the needle probably points towards him.
Yeah. Yeah. And imagining that we've probably got, at least 2 or 3 more years of Clayton Kershaw adding to that legacy, even
Right.
if he's not at peak performance, he's still very, very good as well. So, well, let me switch gears a little bit. And before we close, I'd love to talk a little bit about the 2021 Dodgers. You kind of referenced it. The offseason has been a slow one for most teams, although it's starting to pick up. But Dodger fans that I interact with, they've had to watch the Padres just down south kind of go trade for a bunch of shiny new toys. The Dodgers have sort of added around the fringes, although I like Corey Knebel a lot. I think he's good. But when you look at the Dodgers, in your estimation, are they still the best team today? I mean, even without Justin Turner re-signing, which is something many people expect to happen, do you still think the Dodgers, as constructed right now, are the best team in baseball?
I think that they have a reasonable shot at being that. I think that they've done well to fortify their bullpen. Retaining Blake Treinen was a big
Yeah.
move. I like the idea of Knebel if he's healthy and right. I think that getting David Price back is something that shouldn't be overlooked.
Yeah.
A season after he opted out, I think his arm will be should be in good shape. After so many years of carrying significant workloads. But there's a lot that I think is riding on the Justin Turner question, and it's whether they re-sign Turner or not. How do they fill that productive lineup spot is key. And I know for a while DJ LeMahieu looked like he might be an alternative.
Yeah.
I don't know that the LeMahieu would have been as strong an alternative. Great defender. And I don't think he would have fit Dodger Stadium the same way that he fits Yankee Stadium. I mean, I have a front row seat to that, relatively speaking, because I'm here in Brooklyn and I watch a lot of Yankees games, and his ability to take advantage of that short right field porch is not something that could be replicated in Los Angeles. But the guy is an outstanding hitter.
Yeah.
So the question is what they do there. I know that they're monitoring the Trevor Bauer situation. If they add him, I have my issues with Trevor Bauer as a
You're not alone.
in terms of his public persona. But I mean, obviously, you get that guy in your rotation. If you've got him and Buehler and Kershaw and Urias and hopefully Dustin May. And David Price. I mean, I don't know how you fit it together. Although we've seen the Dodgers, having more than 5 starters is a feature, not a bug.
Yeah.
They can rest guys. They can, and I think this season that shouldn't be underestimated if they're trying to go from a 60 game schedule to a something closer to 162.
Yeah.
Not everybody can make the jump, and they're going to be particularly protective of Kershaw, of Buehler, of Urias. They're not going to overtax these. Oh, we haven't even mentioned Tony Gonsolin.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's my
it's
fifth
an
guy.
It's an embarrassment of riches. Yeah, I mean, I love Tony Gonsolin. I mean, so I think that they've got pitching for days. The Padres are certainly getting there with what they've got. But look, they Darvish and Blake Snell. I mean, they're those are quality additions, but it's still, this is the Dodgers. They've got to come take it from the Dodgers if they want it. I think is how I would phrase it. And I think that if the Dodgers can get Gavin Lux right, they'll be a stronger team. But they've got some touching up to do in order to make sure that they go into this season on the right foot.
Yeah, yeah, I think it was Eno Saris of the Athletic who ranked pitching staffs, and he had the Dodgers #1. And I was like, I mean, the pitching staff felt like the only place that the Padres may have eclipsed. I still feel a lot better about the Dodgers lineup and the Dodgers bullpen than I do the Padres lineup and Padres bullpen. But if the Dodgers still, in some people's minds, have the edge at starting pitching, which I don't disagree with, I think the other two are a little more straightforward. So one other guy that's been mentioned, rumored to the Dodgers, I'm curious to hear your take on, is Marcus Semien. He's a guy that I look at his numbers and I see 2019, it was amazing. I struggle with everything that happened in years not named 2019 with him, especially when I think about the money that he's probably going to command in the 10, 12, $14 million range. I personally like Edwin Rios, and I'd hate to take at bats away from him for a guy like Semien. Where do you stand on Marcus Semien?
Yeah, I don't see the immediate fit unless, are they thinking Semion's going to play third base and Seager shortstop? I guess Semion's probably the better shortstop at this stage. But I think you want to, if you're trying to keep Corey Seager long term, I don't know that you're pushing him to third base, right now, and expecting that he's going to be immediately satisfied with that,
right,
unless you're also backing the Brinks truck up to make sure he knows that he's appreciated. So I think if you're moving from Justin Turner to Marcus Semien, as part of your infield, that's a step down. On the whole, I like Marcus Semien. I think he's a good player. A lot of it depends on the terms that you're expecting to sign him with.
Yeah.
I think that I did a thing at the beginning of the offseason, looking at this year's market of shortstops, which I would say are more like, guys who are short-term fixes or mid-term fixes, Semien, Gregorius, Andrelton Simmons, versus the long-term guys, Lindor and Seager, and what's I think Correa is also in there as well, and it's just night and day. So I don't know. I guess in that light, I'm not wild about the idea of committing to Semien. I mean, if you do, I guess it depends on what, whether you can bring back Justin Turner. If you do want to get younger, maybe more, and more glove friendly, Semien makes some sense. But where do the rest of the pieces fit in that? I don't quite see it. As being the Dodgers' best way to spend money.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I got one last question for you. I'll get you out of here on this. I'm curious if there's a free agent out there that you think's being slept on. Maybe not somebody who's a star, not a Marcelo Zuna who gets talked a lot, but just someone who's available.
That's another one I don't understand the fit for the Dodgers unless we know that there's going to be a DH, and even then, I think Ozuna spent a lot of time at DH this past year. But his glove, he was a guy who's won a Gold Glove. He's not chopped liver in the outfield. But let me think. I mean,
and it doesn't even have to be someone who's a fit with the Dodgers necessarily.
Yeah, that's the thing is whether the guy's a fit with the Dodgers or not is secondary. But I saw Masahiro Tanaka a lot here with the Yankees, and that guy. He had his bad stretches, but he is a fun pitcher to watch. When he's on his game, he's outstanding. And I think, what's missing, especially I'm looking at the Yankees and writing about, writing about them after LeMahieu, and what they needed was, it looks to me like an innings guy in the center of the rotation. They went and they got Corey Kluber, who's offers upside, but between Kluber and Severino and Domingo Germán, they've got three guys who combined to throw one inning last year as their next guys behind Garrett Cole, besides rookie David Garcia. So, Tanaka, with his ability to give you, 150 innings or more, to me, that's undervalued right now. A guy who can just grind out those innings with regularity. So I think he's probably one I would point to. I don't see him as a fit for the Dodgers because of the way things fall. But I don't know. Maybe if they packaged somebody in a blockbuster and suddenly, or lost somebody to injury,
Yeah.
I'd feel differently. But he's a guy who I'm interested to see where he lands.
Yeah, awesome. Well, hey, Jay, I appreciate your time. For those watching, you can check him out on FanGraphs as well as check out his book, Cooperstown Casebook. Jay, enjoy the rest of the offseason. Hopefully there's some new moves coming so you don't have to keep writing about Martin Perez and the likes of that in the near
Well,
future.
next week will be full of Hall of Fame stuff. But yeah, after that, I could use some transactions.
Awesome. Well, enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you soon.